This is the Sports Content Gameplan, the podcast where we go behind the scenes with the creators shaping how we see sports today. I'm your host, Isaac Solina, and each week I have conversations with the people behind the videos, photos, stories, and strategies that brings the game to life. We talk creativity, storytelling, and the real work that happens behind every highlight. In today's episode, I'm joined by Charlie Rowing, social media consultant, sports presenter, and creator. We get deep into his years building Juventus presence on social media, working daily with global superstars, transitioning from behind to in front of the camera, and much more. Let's get into it. Charlie, welcome to the Game Plan.
Thank you for having me, Isaac. Great to be here.
How are you today?
All good, all good. It's a Wednesday, so midway through the week, and a lot to get going with.
I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I think we'll get into a lot of fun stuff. But first, let's start with some quick questions. So, do you have a favorite channel or social media?
Instagram.
And do you have any favorite type of content?
I just love to, like a lot of people nowadays, just love to scroll through Reels, get the instant hit, and just keep going. I mean, how can you not get lost in it? Instagram have really created something there.
Any creators you are inspired by?
It's more brands that I tend to follow than creators. Obviously, there's a lot that do their own thing. And again, playing into that real scrolling, there's so much different types of content, so much funny stuff you can come across, entertaining, shocking. There's just, I think, far too many to name.
Do you have any best DM you ever received?
Oh, best DM. So not on my personal account, but when managing a professional account, getting one from Tom Brady felt quite iconic, working for Juve, because again, obviously he's an icon of American football. So it's not the bread and butter of getting the usual football players. So connecting with Tom Brady was quite interesting.
And if you would describe maybe not your own content, but if you would create content, how would you describe your best content in 3 words when you're creating content?
Engaging, inspiring, and entertaining.
Sounds good. You work with some major brands and teams, but how did you get started and where?
So back in 2016, a long time ago now, I was in digital marketing already for about 4 years, and I wasn't necessarily always in sport. I started out in sports betting and then transitioned to the University of Law, which is completely random. But during that time, I always had an interest in sports. And I thought, you know what, why not apply for this job, this digital editor role at Juve? Because I thought I had the experience and why not go for it? And I got a reply, which was to go for an interview, which was already a great first step. And 6 months later, after a lot of back and forth, I eventually found myself in Turin working for Juventus, which was a real pinch me moment.
It's amazing. Getting that job and also getting to move abroad to a new country. How was that?
Yeah, so a great experience, a great challenge. I think a few years before then, I had already had the desire to move abroad. And when a position like Juve came up, it was almost the perfect combination, really. So it was something that was definitely inside of me of wanting to move to another country and explore a new culture.
And you mentioned it before, but I was also thinking, looking at your resume, working those years at Juventus, that time period of 2017, 2022. For me also, when I was working with social media or sports content that time, it was for me during that time, there was a big shift in social media from 2017. It was just, a part of your communications department. But by 2022, social media is you had to have your own strategy. It had to have their own space. So how did that shift? First, do you agree? And then how does that shift look inside a big club like Juventus?
I mean, it's incredible in how many leaps and bounds social media's come on, hasn't it, in the last few years? When I first moved to Juventus, as I said, TikTok didn't exist. So you see how much it's grown and how much of a real juggernaut it's become. I make no bones about it, and I'm not afraid to say this. If I had applied for Juventus now with the experience back then, I wouldn't even get looked at. I'd probably be laughed out of the room, to be honest. So I think there was a lot of the right timing going into that moment. When I joined Juve, they had just changed their logo, which is still something that's quite discussed now, even amongst fans. But you could see there was a real willingness to change from being perceived as just another football club to an international lifestyle brand. So a big part of my role there through our social media channels and communication was delivering that and hitting that home. So you'll see Juventus partnering with all sorts nowadays. You'll see how premium their content looks. And they just give that elegance. I would say they've succeeded, to be honest, in that transformation. And a lot of other clubs have followed suit, not just from a social media perspective, but also a brand perspective. You see that so many clubs now have changed their logo to make it more dynamic. And some might argue that some clubs have lost their identity a little bit with that. But I think that is just the way that sports is going nowadays.
When you started, was there a smaller team working social media, and then did it grow over time?
So when you think of Juventus, you must think they have 10, 20, 30 people all dedicated to social media. But no, that's not the reality. When I joined, I was one of 3 internationals, and there was another 3 Italians there. And that was basically the team. And bear in mind, after the first year, we were down to 2 Italians and 2 internationals. Such is the nature of the beast. It can take a lot out of you. So, yeah, I mean, it's quite hectic and intense, and there's a lot going on there at all times. It's an ever-changing beast. And if you think of the responsibilities you've got on your shoulders when you're in the social media team at a club like Juventus, you know, it's just mind-boggling now thinking back to what we were able to achieve with such a light team compared to a lot of clubs even at that time. Now that I'm the other side of it, I am aware that they have grown quite a lot, and they do have a lot more dedicated roles. I think, you know, it's necessary now, the way social media is. You do need a big team dedicated to it.
For me, I've been working in some big events, mostly like for larger brands or big organizations, but working for like a club or a team during a whole season has to be like really intense. So how was that?
Exactly as you said it, intense. When I joined, up until the pandemic, we would actually work 6 days a week, which is quite insane thinking back, because away from the job, that gives you 1 day to do everything you need to do in your life admin, do the laundry, go and, I don't know, do the groceries. There's just so much you try and get into 1 day, and it is very tiring. But that said, I would rather something be intense and enjoyable and have this, I don't know if you call it a first world problem. Maybe it's a bit less than that. But to have this issue of trying to fit everything into 1 day, I would rather have gone back and lived all that again, because the rewarding nature of working for Juve, all the experiences I got to have, it just made it so worth it. And then I can tell you that thankfully, yes, after the pandemic, we did switch to 5 days a week, which was much, much needed and appreciated, even though, like I said, with the 6 days, it was still incredible to have all those experiences.
Of course, working in sports, you have these, you know, game days, you have these long days, and then you have those always going up and down in intensity, or like which days are longer or which days are shorter. But also thinking like a club like Juventus, for me, it feels like you have both this, you know, this global fandom, these global things you have to think about, but also the local side of it. So how do you balance the local identity, but also thinking about the global appeal?
Yeah, so I think there's a kind of coolness when you're an international looking at an Italian club. Italians are cool, let's just face it. So there's a way that you tap into that, but at the same time, not making it too local that you're turning off an international audience. I think it's very key to get that balance right. I would say not just at Juventus, I would say most clubs have that local identity, don't they? So I think that's something that you want to acknowledge and be proud of, but there are ways to sort of internationalize it. And of course, you don't necessarily focus on things that are going to affect fans at home. For instance, Juventus museum tickets, for instance, might not be such a thing, because I'm guessing people aren't flying all the way around the world just to go to the museum. They're going to want to go to a game, and then maybe they'll tag along to that. But publishing there's ticket sales during an Italian holiday isn't something, necessary for an international audience. Whereas maybe a reference to an international show that's not so well known in Italy maybe is more for that audience and not the Italian. So I think it's just about having the right judgment and knowing the lay of the land. But as I said, not getting away still from that core identity of the club.
And I saw your post a few days ago about when Cristiano Ronaldo joined the team. So like, how was that shift and what happened? Like, because that also means just one player. Like for me, I'm from basketball mostly, and I know you have these big, huge NBA stars that can like the attention these players get is like mind blowing. So like having a player like Ronaldo join the team, what happened with the communications? What happened with the social media? The expectations and the reality?
So I can tell you from even when there were the rumors of him joining, we would post anything. It could even be the Juventus Museum tickets are on sale. And the likes, the comments on all the posts were just going crazy. And then you imagine when we actually signed him, what that did. I mean, talk about a brand evolution. I mean, it was incredible having him join. And yeah, it was almost like another brand merging with a brand because, look, you know what Ronaldo brings. He's arguably the greatest player in the world. And it was a real boost for the club. It was a great, fun time to have him there. I would say that it really made Juventus become even more international. I would say it took us a step even further. And yeah, for sure, the content would definitely, well, from a numbers perspective, improved all around, whether it was Ronaldo or not. And then when it was Ronaldo, just we did so many numbers. I think if you look on the Juventus YouTube channel, it must be that I would say half of the top 20, if not more, are all Ronaldo videos. That's just one little testament to his impact. And obviously was a great player on the pitch as well. And I was so gutted when he left Juve. It was really upsetting because I thought, he helped carry Juve along. But as you know, in football, nothing lasts forever. So it had to happen sooner or later. But it was great, to have him there and to be part of that experience.
You sent me like some of your favorite content you created or some of your most viral content. So this one was with Cristiano Ronaldo, tweet post. Can you tell me the story behind that one?
So that's interesting because we were playing Barcelona in the Champions League. It was the 2020-21 season. And speaking of the internationalization of the club, we had an internal brainstorming wanting to expand Juve's profile by leaning on Barcelona and them doing vice versa with us. So before the match, we had decided to do an almost staged Twitter war between ourselves and Barcelona. And we're in a WhatsApp chat and we discuss, how it's going to go. We're going to reference past Juve Barca games. They're going to do the same. And we're going to have a little fun back and forth. Great. We agree a finish. However, they decide to change that at the last minute and add an extra comment that we hadn't planned. But not only that, when they beat us 2-0, they made a cheeky comment along the lines of, glad you could see the real GOAT play on your pitch tonight. And obviously Messi Ronaldo is the never-ending story of who is the GOAT. And we thought, okay, we've got to respond to this. What can we do? So we had a little discussion amongst ourselves and we thought, let's be a bit ballsy. We'll say to them, you must have looked it up in the wrong dictionary. We'll bring you the right one at the Camp Nou. Obviously, now we have to go to Barcelona and win. However, didn't we just? We won 3-0. Ronaldo scored 2 goals, had a man of the match performance. And then we dropped that tweet saying we kept our word, we brought it. And that just took off and exploded. So many places picked that up. And I was the one to press the enter key on that. So that's something that, I'm really proud of and helping gain Juve more recognition around the world. And again, those little moments just make working in this industry all worth it.
And you also had to work there during the pandemic with all these challenges. So you also had one content here you created that you mentioned you had to be very creative about. So how did this one come about?
Yeah, so the best Juve goal, sponsored by Ling Long Tire, if I remember correctly. Yeah, so the pandemic was a challenge, as you say. Obviously, with no football, with no product effectively to market, what do you do? And I had a thought, football fans are always debating what's the best goal, what's the best this, what's the best that. So I thought, well, why not let's do the best ever Juve goal? And discussed it with my bosses, with the team, and eventually it was agreed, like, yeah, this is a cool concept, so let's do it. So had to draw up a short list of all the best goals, and obviously that can be very subjective, and you obviously want to include certain players as well. But we got a list down. I can't remember how many goals it was in the end, but was quite a few. And then we just simply rolled it out on social. We had the goals go against each other. We had the fans vote across all social platforms. And eventually it came down to Del Piero and Cristiano Ronaldo. And Del Piero just about won, bearing in mind all the social accounts, and which I think was the right call, by the way. And it was really rewarding to have, brainstormed that concept, put it to the team, had it approved, had a sponsor attached to it even. So it meant that the whole club had bought into the idea, and to see it executed. So yeah, and especially in a time where, like I said, we didn't have matches going on, we didn't have a product to market, we could put out something that was so successful.
You mentioned Del Piero. You also were able to be just next to him when he returned to the Allianz Stadium after 10 years. Can you tell me about that experience?
Yeah, an incredible experience. I mean, there'd been a lot of talk for a long time. When is Del Piero going to return to Allianz Stadium? There were rumors maybe of a fallout of him and the owner, or things behind the scenes. So the wait was, a long one, 10 years, in fact. And I know that he is involved in the Juventus Academy in Los Angeles. That's where he has a residence. And they were visiting that day. And I don't know where it came from that Del Piero was going to be visiting, but it happened. We were told about it. And I got selected, and also was putting myself forward, of course, who wouldn't want to meet the legend, to be the one to welcome him and to capture all the content. So he pulled up in his car, came out, was saying hi to everyone. As you can imagine, a player that iconic got mobbed. And I say to him, "Hey Alex, do you mind recording a video message for us in English and Italian?" He does it, no problem. As always, he's the professional. And then goes into the stadium. But obviously we don't just want to leave it there, because the video message is almost a teaser for what's to come. And then, as you can see in the video, there's that iconic moment where he's almost, I think, himself even taking it in, being back home at the Allianz. And I go out there, I'm just behind him with my phone, videoing him. And he goes to the balcony, gets introduced to the whole stadium. And all the pictures afterwards is, you can see me in the background with my COVID mask on, filming him. And it's just, that was a wow moment, because, the legend coming home and you're the one capturing that, and there in that moment, that's a memory I'll never forget.
And working with these teams or these players, do you feel a lot of pressure to, like, this piece of content, or like this thing has to really, go viral? Or how did you feel during some of these times?
I mean, there's always pressure. You've got to remember that when you're on the social channels, you're not tweeting or posting about yourself. You're representing Juventus, millions of followers worldwide. So you've got to be on it. But at the same time, you can't let it overwhelm you. You just need to, have the experience in how to deal with it. I think even basic things, researching the club, using language such as we and us. I think small things like that go a long way into coming across as being authentic, because authenticity is so important in sports social media, and it's definitely something that you want to get across.
After Juventus, what has been your main work after Juventus?
After 5.5 great years at Juventus, I decided that I needed a new challenge in my career, and I decided to join one of our partners called Socios. Socios are a fan engagement platform leveraged by cryptocurrency, and I went there, was based in Madrid, Spain. They've got many fantastic partners, not just Juventus, but also Barcelona, Atletico Madrid, PSG, and many more. So headed up their social media there as their social media lead. Had a great team working under me. We achieved many great things and had a lot of great experiences that we helped bring to life, working with a lot of those clubs that I mentioned. And then after 1 year in lovely Madrid, I came back to the UK. I decided, with all the experience that I have, why not back myself and go into freelancing? So I'm doing that now. I work with a number of great clients, including DAZN, where I got to go to the FIFA Club World Cup last year with them, cover Champions League and Europa League matches, because I'm not just someone behind the camera, but I also love to be in front of it. That's actually where I come more alive, and that's what I really enjoy doing. But of course, I've got all the knowledge and know-how of social media. So I think it makes me quite multifaceted, not your typical reporter, but also not your typical social media manager.
I was gonna say, or I was gonna ask actually, because like you mentioned, you have more started being in front of the camera, like you mentioned. So you always enjoyed being in front of the camera too.
Yeah, that's something I discovered whilst at Juventus. As being one of the only English speakers, was asked to interview quite a few players that didn't speak Italian a fair few times. And, it started to build something inside of me that I really enjoyed these moments, coming alive. And I also managed to host Juventus's first ever Twitch broadcasts, which obviously that again was a new thing for the club, very traditional, but breaking out into this new international social media. Twitch obviously being a massive streaming platform. So we were on a show, which I also came up with a show name as well, which was Pitch for Twitch, because we were searching for Twitch hosts, but obviously you need a host for the show to find hosts. So me and my colleague Davide, hi Davide if you're watching by the way, we were the very first Juve Twitch hosts, and we had a 5-episode series. And again, that was very stimulating, because of course you do an interview, it's rarely ever live. Although one time I did do a live interview with Matthias de Ligt after a Champions League game with all the press office standing around me, and had no idea it had gone out live as well. Thank God. I think they made the right call, by the way. But yeah, there's so much extra pressure being live. So that was fantastic. And, having these exposures during my time at Juve, it really made me feel that this is what I want to do. This is what I really enjoy, more so than social media. Got to do more of that at Socios. I've done more of that at DAZN, more for my other clients, and even creating my own content and building my own brand. So it's where I come alive.
And now working as a presenter and a creator more yourself, like you mentioned, have you been like being in front of the camera? Has it changed your understanding of content and the content creation process?
So I would say that, especially when it comes to building my own brand, there are things that I've had to get better at, that I've had to adapt. Obviously, with attention spans nowadays, you need to hook someone within the first 3 seconds. Otherwise, you can forget about it. So being very conscious of that, what is going to draw people's attention. Also, how to edit videos yourself. I'm never going to be a videographer, but I can do the basics. I can create, what is going to be great content on social. Obviously, don't ask me to put together a whole 20-minute plus YouTube video, as I would probably be a failure at that. But anyway, that's not really what I go for in my content. That is obviously something I would love to do as well, but that probably means I'm going to need to hire someone and all that stuff. But I can do the basics, and that has taught me, carving my own path, being in front of the camera, that, I can do it, and I can rely on myself to put together what I need.
I asked you also before this show that if you have your 3 top tips or top plays for like managing big brands or big entities on social media, what would they be?
So my 3 top tips would be planning. Now, this can take the form of content calendars, to-do lists, but obviously when you're so immersed in content every single day, you're going to need some structure to it. Otherwise, you're going to go mad, you're going to forget things, you're going to let people down. So definitely having a content calendar and to-do list is definitely an essential. Also, understanding the nature of the product. Now, you might not believe this, but football can actually be predictable, because what are you always going to have? The team are always going to arrive. You're always going to have a lineup. The team are always going to have a warm-up. The match is always going to start. There's always going to be a half-time, a full-time, some kind of reaction post-match. And this is something I also learned during COVID when we were scrambling to create content, because, again, another idea I had was to show entire full matches live on our YouTube channel. Obviously broadcasting matches you don't tend to give away for free, but in one period, why not do it? Why not get people tuning in? And I thought, a cute, funny way to promote it could be doing a fake live tweet of the matches almost. So I would obviously plan based on the match, knowing obviously how it's going to go, the arrival, the kickoff, the big moments, the goals, the halftime. But that made me realize that actually you can plan for some things, because that's just the nature of football. And then really all you need to plan for is the unpredictable things. And maybe it doesn't sound so intuitive, but honestly, it really helps when you can map out those basic things that you know are going to happen every game, because then it really does leave your mind free to think about the unpredictable moments, like I said. And I feel like you can be more creative in those moments, and you don't need to worry about, hitting the little things, and it makes a massive difference. Another thing I think is really important is, and I kind of touched upon this earlier, is research. See what your competitors are doing, because, when we were at Juve, there were clubs that we would look at and see what content, they were producing. Namely, I remember rightly, Liverpool, PSG, Arsenal, there's always ways to get inspired. I think, the best ideas often come from other people's content where you think, okay, I can do this better, or maybe it sends you in another direction. But that's usually where it tends to come from. So I think doing your research is very important. And also, again, this is something else I touched upon earlier, but being relatable as well, being relatable to your brand, because I think being relatable is not just the key to good social media, it's the key to all good marketing. And lastly, I would say detail. Pay attention to what's going on in your world, but not just that, the one outside of it, because things are constantly changing all the time, not just in football, but in the world, new trends. And I guess it ties back into that relatability. But I remember one time at Juve where we were signing Dusan Vlahovic, was a big signing, and we had reporters, fans camped outside of J Medical, and Leonardo Bonucci's walking through because he's getting a evaluation on some injury or something, and he turns to the crowd and jokingly says, "You're expecting someone else." And then when Vlahovic goes and does his medical, there's a nice photo of him and Bonucci together, Bonucci and him, exchanging words. And as soon as I saw that, I decided, right, the caption is, "You're expecting someone else." And that just blew up, all because of that, attention to detail.
Thank you. Those were great tips, and I agree on them, all of them also. But I also think, looking back or looking now, what skills do you think are becoming essential that didn't matter as much when you started out?
If I had to name one of the three that I'd said, I would probably go for detail, because again, trends and the way content is moving and progressing, I think you really need to be on top of it, because if you're not, that's just engagement and new potential followers that you're just leaving on the table if you're not getting on top of the latest trends, the latest going on in the world relating to your audience. So I think it's very key to make sure that you're paying attention to what is happening in the world, in the sporting world, and just to be conscious of it, to be aware of it.
And we have talked about some of your content that you have created that went viral, but I also wanted to ask if you have any, with all your experience and looking at content through, like we both do, like you consume so much content and you work with it every day. So do you have any pet peeves, or like when you see a content, you feel like, I just want to change this and it's going to be so much better?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, as I said, I'm a bit of a sucker for detail. So I tend to notice the little things. It could even be in the caption where, I think, you could have done a bit better. There was something not in the world of social media, but in broadcast. I remember hearing a presenter, he had a Brazilian World Cup winner on the show, and it was his birthday. And he said simply, "Happy birthday." And I was thinking the whole time, why did you not go the step further and just say parabéns? You could have just done that little tiny thing. And I know this doesn't really make a difference, but this tells you how detail orientated I am, because I just, I love little moments like that, because then you might get a nice reaction out of him. And I think it makes you come across a bit more cultured. And yeah, I'm always looking for little things here and there.
What are you most excited about for yourself or your career or in sports content overall the coming years?
Establishing myself, being there for the big moments. Obviously, we've got the World Cup coming up. I still have bookings available, by the way. I hope to be there, but you know what? If not, I'll be at the next big event and the next one and the next one, because being on the ground is, where I want to be. It's where I feel like I'm most alive. And I'm just looking forward to establishing myself, to telling the stories that need to be told in sport, that are engaging, they're exciting, and just being at every single possible sporting event that I can, telling the story and being amongst the people.
You also been able to work with a lot of different sports now, when I look at your resume, if I'm correct.
Yes, that's correct. Obviously, football is my bread and butter, but there are other things I have transitioned into. And I think when you consume so much sport, there are things that bleed into others and you can pick up on the big moments. I also really enjoy, and there's a question mark whether or not it's a sport, but professional wrestling. That is very fun and very entertaining. I know it's scripted, but then so is your favorite Netflix series. So why not give it a chance? And one of my clients is in the wrestling world. Shout out to Inside the Ropes. Produce some great content with them. I also attended my first ever NFL match last year at the Bernabeu in Madrid. Went into it not knowing, even half of the rules, but that was an incredible moment. And I thought, you know what, I'm going here. Why not make some content? And it ended up getting collabs with Barca. So that was great. 3 great pieces of content made out of that moment. And I also recently did a reel on baseball, on the Italian national baseball team. Again, despite not knowing hardly anything about the sport. But as I said, a lot of things do translate. And a journalist friend of mine once said to me, he was going to cover a match. It was, again, the Bernabeu. He was covering a Real Madrid match. And he said, I'm going there, but look, we've got Arsene Wenger in the studio. And I could never compete with him football knowledge-wise. But what I can do is I can paint the picture of being here and tell the experience. So that gave me the confidence to realize that even if you're not such an expert on a sport, just by being there, just by describing what's happening, just by, again, just relating to the moment, it can go such a long way.
And maybe you mentioned them now, but do you have like big lessons or lessons from that you've learned from just going from sport to sport, content creation wise or overall?
Well, embrace the chaos for sure. As I said, there's a lot of pressure in these moments, but you've also got to enjoy it. And when you come out the other side of it, it can be so rewarding. So if I could sum it up in one phrase, it would be embrace the chaos.
Amen. And where do you see sports content, the scene heading in the coming next few years, especially at, these levels that you have worked on?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. You're seeing nowadays more and more groundbreaking deals, such as Bundesliga, La Liga, World Cup in recent memory, all going to smaller platforms in the sense of, rather than traditional broadcasters, streamers are getting access to live content as well. So I think sport will become more accessible. I think in more easily consumable platforms as well, and more easily consumable methods, because again, going back to people's attention spans declining, I think that's also why Baller League and Kings League are so successful nowadays, because people want that instant quick action. So it's going to be an interesting journey, that's for sure.
Looking to maybe back at yourself 10, 11 years ago, or for other younger creators today, what would you say your advice to someone trying to break into this industry today?
So it depends where you are in your career. I think, if we're talking people that are still looking to go to university, then I would say definitely study in an area that is either directly in social media or is connected to it, such as journalism or digital marketing. Even if you don't major in either of those, though, it's not a deal breaker. But make sure as well that you're actively creating content. Again, look at what is being done by others. Think, what could you add to it, or how you could make it better, or even, just doing the same thing and putting your perspective on it. Don't be afraid to put yourself in front of the camera or to edit a video. And you know what? It might be bad the first time. It might be bad the second time, third time, but eventually you will get better at it. And that's how you learn, by doing things. So study and create, and also connect as well. LinkedIn is such a powerful tool. I've gotten so many of my gigs just through LinkedIn messages. I don't even really apply to roles that are advertised anymore. So it shows that the people it really is important. So make those connections with, the big brands, the big clubs, and reach out to people. And yeah, again, like most things in life, it's a numbers game. You might well get rejected, but eventually someone will reply. Eventually you will be able to form those connections. So I would say it's study, create, and connect.
And also, what kind of impact do you hope that your content or your journey can have in the sports media world?
You're asking the tough questions now. I hope that people can find my content entertaining, but educational as well. I like to inform people. I like them to think, I didn't know that before. and this guy, is a really good source of knowledge. So I hope just to be able to entertain and to educate people with what I do.
It's been so interesting talking to you today, Charlie. I learned so much. And my last question always on this show is, if you have any creator or any person in sports content or in sports marketing, sports media that you would like to hear on this podcast?
I love what Atletico Madrid are doing on social media. So if you can get anyone from there, that would be fantastic. I do happen to know the social media lead. I don't know whether she'd be up for it or be able to, but I would love to hear from her.
Sounds amazing. I will try to get her then.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Charlie, for today. It's been a treat.
Thank you, Isaac. It was a pleasure.